Okay, guys, thanks for coming. My name is Azual. I'm the head of Agony's PvP University. I was formerly a member of Red vs. Blue for about a month or two, a while back. And one of the things I wanted to do when I was here, actually, was run a class getting people involved in FCing, because one of the things I noticed was the main reason that fights don't happen is because nobody steps up to FC them. And I just think it would be really good if more people took the reins and did that, and hopefully, when a class like this will help people get the confidence to do that. With me, I have my beautiful assistant Glepp, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello class, my name is Glepp. I'm a Norwegian. I've been flying with Agony for about a year and a half. I've been in game for about 2 years and a half, started in EVE Uni. I'm one of the regular FCs in Agony, which basically means that I'm one of the guys twisting arms, getting people into fleet, planning gangs, forming gangs, and developing fleet concepts. I like to FC. Well, at the moment I'm suffering from a bit of FC burnout, so I've started taking up soloing again, but I really like FCing. I try to do it a lot. Not particularly good at it, but I try to do it.
Now that does actually bring me on to quite an important point. Most people who FC do not think they're good at FCing, even if they are. Most of the FCs that I've flown with think they're not good at FCing, and they only really do it because they feel that someone needs to and nobody else has done it. So I expect a lot of you are in a similar position. You don't really think that you'd be any good as an FC, and that's probably why you don't do it. But just bear in mind, we're in the same boat. Actually, you'll probably find you're a lot better than you think you are. And sometimes it's more important to just have somebody getting everyone together, making sure everyone's on the same page and doing something. And it doesn't really matter whether they're doing it as optimally as they could. It's more just about the fact that somebody's doing it and everyone's doing the same thing, and that's what makes an effective fleet.
Yeah, just to iterate on that, Azual, one of the things that I started FCing for Agony when we moved to Providence, which was non-invasion pact sov area. We had a lot of neighbors who would come into our systems for a fight, and then Agony usually goes about PvP in a sort of decentralized way, where people are already out in space in their ships and just, okay, let's take him on, let's go, and bam, we got curb stomped. So that's one of the things that kind of spurred me to FC, was just, I started telling people, okay, dock up in station, form up with some organized ships, let's all go at once, let's have a plan, and do it. And so we went from getting slaughtered quite a bit to actually owning quite a bit. Sorry for the use of the term owning, I don't like it. Carry on.
So yeah, that's pretty much who we are and where we're coming from anyway. What we're going to do today, for those of you who haven't read the thread and just got arm twisted into doing this, this is an FC seminar, so we're going to spend a couple of hours probably talking about FCing. We've got a few topics lined up we want to discuss. After that, we'll then go out on a roam into nullsec, so if you have expensive implants in your head, you may want to jump clone before you come out with us. We'll probably do that again for a few hours, depending on how long it takes, how many targets we find, how tired you guys are. We can probably just keep going until people all fall asleep, but we'll see how it goes. Just a couple of notes on using voice comms. Obviously, we are doing this over eVoice. Try not to talk over people when they're talking, especially if it's me or Glepp and we're going through some of the material we want to talk about. Trying to wait until afterwards before you start talking, or maybe post questions in text and then just speak up when someone asks you to, just for the class portion, really. We might have a similar thing, just be sensible with comms. We're not going to spend ages talking about comms today. Usually on our classes we do. If anyone of you has taken one of our classes, you'll have had us rant at you about that for ages. But yeah, just be sensible and just try and keep comms clear, and hopefully things will go fairly well. One thing that I will say is you'll probably hear myself and Glepp, or should I say Azual and Glepp, because this is the point I'm making. You'll probably hear Azual and Glepp refer to ourselves in the third person quite often. And this is a really good habit to get into when you're in a big group talking on voice comms, because the chances are people don't know who you are. So if you say, I have tackle on someone, or like, oh, it's me, no one knows who me is and no one knows who I is. So try and use your name if you can. It sounds a bit weird, but you get used to it.
Yeah, we had a class roam recently where we were with a fleet on a station, and there was another gang there. And as we were warping off, one of the guys said, I'm tackled, and it's just like, alright, who is I? And it's so a good habit is to refer to yourself in the third person, like, glepp is tackled, I'm gonna go down unless you guys come help me. Much easier for the FC.
Anyway, with that, I'm going to hand over to glepp, who's volunteered to do a lot of the talking today, and he's going to start talking about FCing.
No, I thought you were going to talk more about the YFC and how much fun it is, Azual.
Yeah, well, I've kind of done that a little bit, but yeah, just to reiterate, guys, FCing is really important. If you go out in a fight and you don't have an FC, well, chances are if you don't have an FC, you end up not fighting, you'll just stay docked. But if you don't have one, it just makes a massive difference, and it doesn't matter whether the FC is good or whether they're making all the right choices. It's just about having someone taking charge and making sure things happen, and it's a really, really important thing. I can't overstate it enough.
Yeah, just to iterate on that, sorry for the use of the CCP term here, iteration. It's, in my opinion, FCing should be a low-key kind of thing. You shouldn't be afraid of stepping up, and people should be respectful of the people who actually stick their neck out to FC. There's a lot of pressure involved in it, or you can feel that there's a lot of pressure involved in it. And it gets better with time, and you feel the pressure a bit less. But try to when I posted my first gangs in Agony, I said, this is a suicide fleet, I'm going to do my best to get you all killed. Naturally I wasn't, but it's kind of a lowering of expectation, and you should really just start off lowering the expectations to yourself, both for the people in your gang and for you. It makes it a lot easier to just get over the first fear of sticking your neck out and going out and doing it. Oh, by the way, I'm going to be talking a lot here. If you guys want to ask me something, feel free. In that case, could you put an X in fleet with a question? You don't have to say like what your question is. I like to do that over comms, but put an X or question or whatever in fleet, and the rest of you guys try to limit the talking in fleet chat. And Dell has a question.
I don't really have a question, but as somebody who FCs 95% of the time I'm in the game, it's important for our members to realize that RVB has a lot of new people, and so new people are especially, afraid to FC if they've care beared for a long time, or they've been in the game for 2 months, or they don't know the people in the corporation. So, people aren't going to step up instantly. So, we have a few guys who FC all the time, and we have plenty of guys who could FC, but don't for various reasons. So it's especially important for those of us in this channel who have been here for a while and know what's going on to FC. It just makes it easier for everybody. As somebody who's FC'd probably 1,500 or 2,000 fights in RVB, sometimes you just get tired of doing it after a while. So, and you know what happens when there's no FC. Everybody just disappears or sits in the station or just twiddles their thumbs. So please listen and please think about what these guys are saying, and if you can find a way to FC, do it. It makes it fun for everybody, because that the new guys aren't going to get a fleet up and head out right away.
Absolutely. Just to give Dell some support there. Personally, in my opinion, you don't know how good or bad an FC you are unless you do it a lot. The first time you FC, you're gonna suck. Most of us suck the first time we FC. We get information overload, tunnel vision, so much stuff going on, so many recon reports that we get swamped, and we end up not making decisions or bad decisions. But I mean, it takes like 3 or 4 at least FCings to get over that bit. It's tricky, and you don't know if you're good at it until you've done it a bit. Yeah, exactly. It's mental shutdown. Everyone gets their ass kicked all the time. I get my ass kicked repeatedly. But then again, I like getting my ass kicked. Okay, anyway, what we're going to go over today. I'm going to leave some of the basic stuff behind here. And we're going to talk a little bit about stuff you need to think about or have some experience with, or thoughts about at least, when you're FCing. First of all, we're going to start off by some talk about fleet compositions. How do you compose your fleet? What ships to bring? How do you think about that? Then we're going to talk about scouting. Then we're going to talk about planning and engagement, like can we take these guys on or not? And then we're going to go into something that's pretty important, which is called dictating the terms of engagement. Like getting yourself in the right spot for the fight and getting the enemy in a disadvantageous spot. Then we're going to talk a bit about target calling, and finally disengaging or preventing the enemy from disengaging. And you are all free to stop me with questions with an X in fleet. Actually, I would welcome that, because I want this to be a bit more like a dialogue than just a monologue from my part. Right, fleet compositions. There's two ways to approach this. We're going to start off with the different roles in the fleet. You're doing a reasonably organized fleet. There's certain roles in the fleet that you want filled. Anyone who can give me any ideas of what I'm thinking about when I'm saying roles?
I'm guessing tackle, damage, reps.
Gone.
Yeah, scout, tackle, yep. Anything else?
Skirmish.
E-War, FC, scout, yep. Bait. Oh, bait, very advanced. Good, good. XO.
Yeah,
Excellent.
XO, etc.
Yep, try to give your response in fleet. Oh, someone even said skirmisher. Excellent. You've got all the points I was thinking about covered here, guys. Except one. First of all, is of course you need to have an FC. To take a lot of the load off an FC, it's often a good idea to pronounce an XO and a backup FC when you go down. So someone else will take over calling targets. The XO is a good guy to have to, like Azual today, to set up squads, make sure fleet's reasonably organized, people get re-invites if they need or whatever. And then a backup FC, of course, so that when both the FC and the XO goes down, someone else takes over. That's a nice thing to sort of fix in advance. But what I was really thinking about is scouts, and something we in Agony refer to as skirmishers. To have to get a good fight, you need to find your enemy first, right? And having good scouts is really important. In Agony, we also use something we call skirmishers. Anyone know what we mean by a skirmisher? Anyone? Oh, Venuri.
Yeah, the skirmisher goes out there, searches out targets and holds them until the fleet can arrive.
Yep, and what kind of ships do we generally use for skirmishers?
They're normally interceptors.
Yep, we prefer to use fleet interceptors for that, because I mean, a scout just finds the target, but a skirmisher can find and hold the target until the fleet gets there. So usually we use a fleet interceptor with a long point or a warp disruptor, and a little bit of tank, and they can grab and hold a couple of targets, or one target, and keep them occupied while the fleet gets on the way. And I like to think of the scouts as my eyes, and the fleet interceptors or skirmishers as my fingers, reaching out, holding targets. And then we come to the role that you didn't mention, which is a chaser tackle. I mean, you have the skirmishers, fleet interceptors for your long-range points. Anyone who has a thought about what do I mean when I say chaser tackle? Prudence?
It's somebody who chases after the people that get away.
But we usually actually use them on grid. So Kasha said scram tackle, right? Chaser tackle, we generally use a micro-warp drive assault trig like a fast Jaguar, with a bit of tank and a scram. And they will burn after fast micro-warp driving targets like hurricanes, vagabonds, cinnables, stuff like that are trying to kite or trying to disengage or whatever. And they get those scrams, hold them, so the fleet can kill them. Very important role to have. So we've covered scouts, skirmishers, chasers. Skirmishers and chasers are tacklers. I like to have a couple of skirmishers with the fleet for the long points, fast long points, but I also usually need one or two chasers with the fleet to get those elusive nano ships. I don't know if you see a lot of those in Red VB, but out in Nullsec we see them all the time. Right, next role, E-War. What different types of E-War are there? There's ECM, Damps. There's also Painters, excellent. Newts, I guess that's a form of E-War as well, but yeah, cap warfare. And quite often in a fleet, we tend to think of E-War as force multipliers. Basically, if you have a 5-man gang, and one of them is a Falcon, and you come up against another 5-man gang, of which none is a Falcon, and the ships are otherwise reasonably matched, who do you think is going to win that fight?
That's pretty easy.
It's going to be the guys with the Falcon, unless the other fleet can take him out immediately, take out the Falcon. Otherwise, those guys are probably going to have at least half or maybe all of their gang perma-jammed. So, E-War as a force multiplier. If every ship in a fleet... We did this in Providence when we were flying Drake gangs against Abaddons, or long-range Amarr battleships, turret-based. And every single Drake fit a tracking disruptor with an optimal range script. And we also had curses on grid with 5 tracking disruptors each, and we had a system for distributing that E-War. So every single opponent, the Abaddons, had at least one bonus range tracking disruptor on them, and that meant that their range went from about effective range went from 55 kilometers down to about 30 kilometers. Now, what's the primary engagement range of an HML Drake? Well, that's up to 70 kilometers. So we just kept our Drakes at 60 kilometers, and we were untouchable. So E-War, and we were about evenly numbered, but they were all in battleships, we were all in battlecruisers, and we're pretty much, after we got the tracking disruptors figured, they couldn't hurt us. That was a lot of fun. And final force multiplier? Tackle for that was Bubbles. Kasha, you had a question?
I had the same question as Shen, what Shen asked.
Yeah, we try to keep them bubbled. But they also wanted to stay on grid to try and kill us, but it takes a while to figure out that you're tracking disrupted and not hitting anything. They need to have decently good comms to figure out that their entire fleet is tracking disrupted and they're not hitting much. Yes, and that brings us to the next force multiplier, which is remote rep or logistics. What are the logistics ships? The Tech 2 logistics ships. One is the Oneros, the Guardian, the Scimitar, and the Basilisk. Excellent. And their Tech 1 equivalents? Osprey, yes. Scythe, Executor. Does the Scythe have remote rep?
No, neither does Scythe or the Augury does.
Yeah, the Augury is for cap. So you have the Osprey and the Executor, who do shield and armor remote rep. Do you use those in RVB?
No.
Well, you should actually, because we've had quite a lot of fun with Tech 1 cruiser gangs with a couple of Executors along. Armor tank cruisers with like 3 or 4 Executors. That's a huge force multiplier. It will take the enemy at least 3 times as long to kill your DPS, or they'll have to primary the Executors. Yeah, they usually die unless your pilots are good at kiting and evading. It can be pretty good. So, if you want to try out logistics, I really recommend you try out some Ospreys and execs. Okay, so we covered the different roles there. Further on fleet composition. We generally like to, in Agony at least, to pay a little bit of attention to what kind of gang are we flying. What is it, a fleet concept? Is it a concept fleet, or is it a unified sort of gang? What am I thinking about here? Anyone have any ideas? Nano fleet was mentioned. Wolfpack, AHAX, HSSR. What do you mean by HSSR, Prudence?
High speed, short range.
Oh, yeah, or up close with blaster DPS. Yep, and someone mentioned armor shield tanks. Excellent. That's my first point. I generally like to run either shield gangs or armor gangs. I don't like to mix tanks. The reason for that is not logistics, but it's maneuverability and speed of the fleet. If you're running with a shield gang, you're reasonably fast, reasonably maneuverable, and most of your ships take the same time to align. Same goes for armor gangs. You're a lot slower, but most of your ships or all of your ships will generally have the same or comparable alignment and marker warp drive speed. So it's often a good idea to sort of give some thought into, is this going to be a shield gang or an armor gang? Try not to mix it. Next one is ship size. Do we run a frigate gang, mixed frigs cruisers, battle cruisers? Do we run a thrasher fleet? Do we run a battleship fleet? Stuff like that. So, and why is that important? Trying to get reasonably comparable ship size into your fleet. Why don't I want battleships mixed in my cruiser gang? Yep, speed, agility, ship capabilities, warp speed. Well, ship capabilities, I mean, why wouldn't I want a battleship? They do tons of DPS and they have a huge tank. Why don't I want battleships in my cruiser gang? And tracking is part of it. Yeah, they're too slow, exactly. So when I'm running a cruiser gang, I generally try to get the fleets reasonably maneuverable, and we'll use that speed to our advantage. But yeah, it's a fastish, at least a shield tank one. But if you get battleships like armor tank, heavy MR battleships mixed into that, then it's going to slow the whole fleet down for very little gain. Yeah, but when I'm running a Tech 1 cruiser gang, I don't like to bring Macarials, because my Tech 1 cruiser gangs generally tend to die. All of them. So bringing Macarials would kind of make me wary of taking engagements. It's important because no, nanomech is not necessarily a kill mail waiting to happen. The nanomechs are fun, and the guys who fly them should be decently good. But when I'm flying a Tech 1 cruiser gang, I know that my whole fleet costs like 100 million ISK. That's pocket change for all the guys in the fleet. So I can take an engagement where I know we're all going to die. I don't need to be wary about the cost of it or anything. Someone's keying up here. Right. So basically, I don't want to mix in really expensive ships in a cheap gang, because it will change how I think about the gang. If I want to be gung-ho and then some guy says, I'm going to bring him a carrier or a Cinnable or a Vindicator or whatever, usually I just go, no, you're not. Because this is a suicide fleet and I want to keep it like that. Okay, I'm going to run through a couple of the common fleet concepts. First one I was thinking of going into is shield battle cruisers. HSSR, shield gank. HSSR means high speed, short range. Shield tank, gank, battle cruisers. Nanocanes, yes. Drakes. Shield tanked harbingers. Shield tank brutixes. Shield tank myrmidons. I'm really fond of the hurricane fleets because they're so maneuverable, and it's a good practice for kiting. But generally, a shield tank battlecruiser gang. What are the advantages and disadvantages of a shield tank battlecruiser gang? Anyone? Put an X in fleet. Prudence.
The advantages are speed and high DPS, because you'll usually fit, at least on the cane, you can fit bigger guns. But the disadvantage is that your sig radius is also higher.
Yep. Green Yoshi. Disadvantages?
Disadvantages are, though, even if you can disengage, you don't have a whole lot of tank. You can't stay in one place unless you've got a mobile scimitar squad behind you.
Exactly. Shield tank battlecruisers are generally a lot more fragile than armor tank battlecruisers, and that means that you need to pick your engagements a bit more carefully, and you also need to rely a bit more on pilot skill. Yep. Okay. Tech 1 cruiser fleet, shield tank, gank cruiser fleet. Advantages and disadvantages. X's in fleet. Track-a-tool. Yeah, on voice comms, please. Yep, cheap, speedy, high damage up close. Disadvantages. Yeah, it's pretty much the same principles, but one advantage over the battle cruisers is cheapness. Tech 1 cruiser fleet. It's a good place to start as an FC. Tech 1 frigates might be even better, but Tech 1 cruisers, at least I mean, with Tech 1 cruisers, you don't have to worry too much about cost. It's cheap, but you can kill a lot of stuff with it. I'll give you an example afterwards. We're going to give you access to the Agony kill board, and we're going to go through a couple of fights and demonstrate why we won or why we lost or why the fight went as it did. But anyway, okay. Tech 1 cruisers, battle cruisers. Let's exchange those shield tanks for armor tanks. Now, how does that change the fleet? X is in fleet, and you're gonna answer on voice comms. Green Yoshi.
Armor is far slower. It relies on staying in one place more. It's usually a bit more durable, but you don't have the damage or the fall off of a shield gang.
And why don't you have the damage or fall off?
Because usually most of your lows are taken up with armor mods such as plates or hardeners.
Yep. But there's another advantage to doing armor gangs. What's that? What do you do with your mid slots in armor gangs?
E-War.
Yes, you fill them with E-War. So an armor battlecruiser gang with sensor dams, tracking disruptors is gonna negate a lot of the enemy's damage. So you're not just tanking with your armor, and the armor buffer is usually higher than the shield buffer, but you're also tanking with your E-War mods. So in addition to increasing your own tank, you're reducing their DPS. And that can be a lot of fun. We ran some armor cruiser gangs in Providence with lots of E-War. And I think we had an even number with a Drake gang we took on. And they killed 2 of our E-War ships and we nuked them. Like, it was a 10v10 fight or something, but thanks to E-War, they died. That was fun. Okay. A couple of the common nullsec fleet types. Anyone heard of vagabonds? Fire truck.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of them. They go really, really, really fast.
It's really, really, really fast. Kenda?
They're typically faster than almost anything in the fleet, except for maybe a Dramiel. Some of the really fast stuff, but they're pretty fragile. High DPS. They really exemplify what a shield tank can do if they're flowing right.
Yep, okay, so say you're out FCing Tech 1 Cruiser Gang, and Scout reports that you're about 12 guys in Tech 1 Cruisers. And there's a 10-man gang, a couple of systems out, with like 5 Vagabonds, a Rapier, a Scimitar, a Saber, and a couple of Frigs.
Unless you feel like getting your ass...
I'll show you an example later of Tech 1 Cruiser kicking such a fleet's ass, but what will that fleet do if they're clever in an engagement? How will they go about an engagement? Exactly. Saki Sucker?
I thought I might have a drop on them on 0 like, directly and then apply DPS immediately before they can like get away.
Exactly, because a Vagabond gang, their advantage is kiting. They're fast, and they have decent engagement range. They can hit up to 40 kilometers with barrage. So they're gonna try and stay out of your range and kite you. That means they can kill you from range while you can't get close because they're faster. It's difficult because it takes quite a bit of pilot skill and manual piloting on their end, but it's very, very effective when done right. Okay, so that's Nanoshag. Or Vagabonds, we call them Nanoshag in Agony. I think we made that up for its Nano Special Heavy Assault Group or something. We like to put Shag in fleet titles. Okay, armor hacks. Anyone ever heard of armor hacks? Fire truck?
Yeah. I don't know about Munins or everything like that, but I used to fly Zealots as armor hacks sometimes.
Yep. And what is... Can someone explain the concept behind an armor hack fleet? Okay, I'll do it. Basically, it's armor-tacked hacks, mostly Zealots, but Ishtars work pretty well for it as well. You can put Fleet Stabbers, you can put Munins, but Munins aren't the best. They sig-tank, they use afterburners, so they have speed, but not very high speed. They can go up to like 700 with bonuses, but they have a very low sig, maybe 80 meters. And that means that battleships will do very reduced damage to them, battlecruisers too. And they generally rely on having good transversal and good speed and low signature. And they use a lot of logistics ships, like Guardians, mostly Guardians. So they avoid damage by sig and speed tanking, and they do pretty decent damage out to about 30 kilometers. Armor hacks are a lot of fun, and they are a very tough opponent when you come up against them. Okay. Sniper hacks. Anyone ever seen a proper sniper fleet flown against them? Or taken part in one? Green Yoshi?
Fleets mixed with Munins and long-range Zealots. Eagles if you're really poor on DPS, keeping between 70 kilometers and 100 kilometers from a target, usually aligned occasionally with Scimitar. Lightly tanked, long-range DPS. Usually assisted with either a pull bubble on a gate or an interdictor.
Yep, you can also use Dimosses actually. They're not too bad in sniper hack fleets, but these are dangerous opponents. They will, and they can come through a gate right into your fleet and then just burn off because they do 2 kilometers per second. And burn off while they pop your tackle and then start working on your heavier ships. They're a dangerous opponent. Munin gangs are a different concept actually, because Munins, the Munin gangs that Black Legion and recently also Agony have started flying don't necessarily rely on range like the sniper hacks. Their max engagement range is out to like 90 kilometers, but rarely above 70. But they're more like close-range brawlers. Their engagement envelope is usually about 30 to 50 kilometers. They use short-range, high-damage ammo, and they rely on alpha damage, because artillery has really high alpha damage, and thus they can burn through logistics. Very tough opponents. They use a lot of scimitars. They're hard to kill, and dangerous fleets to go up against, unless you know what you're doing. And I don't, personally. Okay, battleship gangs, I don't think I'll touch too much on that. Any more questions on fleet composition, fleet concepts, before we move on? Sniper battleship fleets aren't really done that much anymore in nullsec, because of the probes. So whenever someone does a sniper battleship gang, you'll just probe them out, drop a dictor on them, and then warp in some armor hacks, and they're all dead. Yeah. Well, yeah, Maelstroms, but that's alpha. It's alpha sniper battleships. And not really sniper because engagement range is like 70 kilometers. But yep. Okay, I'm gonna move on to scouting now, since you don't have any more questions for this. Scouting. Scouting is probably scouts are probably the most important people in the fleet. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that scouts and skirmishers are the roles I tend to value the most. They are the eyes of FC. They get intel on the targets, and they get intel from the surroundings to see if the targets have backup. And they are my eyes, and they are my fingers. And sometimes they flip the bird, sometimes they grab a target and hold it so we can kill it. So, if you're FCing, you have like 20 guys in your fleet, and you all know them quite well, who are the ones you want to put in a scout role? Anyone? Yeah, they gotta have mics, they gotta have communications, but other than that, calm people, that works, but some of our more excitable people are really good scouts as well. I tend to like to put my best soloers as my scouts. People who like to solo, and especially people who also FC, are the best scouts in my opinion. So if I can get, let's see, Alta and Granger to our better and more Jintox as ZA, you're keying up. But if I can get some of our FCs to skirmish or scout for my gang, I am very, very, very happy. And if I can get some of our better solo PvPers to skirmish for me, I know that we will kill stuff. Always. So in my opinion, yeah, Alta is a solo god indeed, and he is an awesome skirmisher. And so are a lot of the good FCs and skirmishers in Agony. They are solo gods. Why is that so important? Why do I want to have the FCs and the soloers as my scouts? Finn?
They know what they're looking for while they're out roaming around, as well as the ability to stay alive long enough for you guys to jump in.
Exactly. And they have, some people have written situational awareness here. What does it take to be a good soloer? It's not about killing stuff. It's about getting the fight on your terms, and also figuring Is this guy alone, or does he have someone else with him? So to be a good soloer, you need to be curious. You need to be inquisitive about your surroundings and inquisitive about the other pilots that you're facing. So the best scouts are the soloers because that's instinct to them. And they are also, I mean, they move, some of the guys that scout for us or skirmish for us, they don't feel at home in high-sec. They get really uncomfortable in high-sec because there's so much stuff there. It really gets on them. And you can't see local because there's like 80 people in local and you have to scan through it and everything. Too many targets. Out in nullsec though, these guys, they feel at home and they feel more comfortable. They'll have the whole area bookmarked, they'll have ping or text off gates, and they'll move with a lot of comfort. And that means they're also going to be more calm in assessing a situation. So if you don't have any good soloers, you don't have any FCs to assign to scouts, who do you assign then? Yeah, okay, I'll explain pings or tactical bookmarks. Basically, in nullsec, people can put bubbles on gates so you can't warp straight to a gate, or you'll get dragged into a camp and killed. So to get around that, we make bookmarks like 250 kilometers off a gate. So you can warp to that spot, check out the gate, and then warp down to it. It's a very good idea to have it also in high-sec, because you might not want to end up in that gate camp with your battleship, or cruiser or whatever, when you're soloing. Yeah, but if you don't have any good soloers or FCs to assign as scouts, try to get the more experienced guys to go scouting. The ones with comms, the ones who are reasonably calm, and the ones who are experienced, so they know what kind of gangs they're looking for, they know they can assess the situation quickly. You don't have to be too experienced as an FC, but your scouts should be reasonably experienced players. That will help you a lot. Any questions on scouting? Anyone? Okay, what kind of ships do you generally use? Oh, okay, Thekla?
Wondering how far ahead you send your scouts, usually.
That's a good question. If I have covops, I'll actually ask them to move into the area we're going to roam around in and look for targets. Sort of a free roll. I might assign a region or an area of the region, like Lower Syndicate and Upper Syndicate and the Arm of Syndicate that goes down towards Outer Ring. And they'll just have a free reign to go looking for targets. My skirmishers, I generally tend to assign as +1, +2, -1. And that means I have one skirmisher 2 gates ahead of the fleet, one which is 1 gate ahead, and one which is trailing behind by 1 gate. And the trailing behind is actually quite important, because sometimes you can get caught pretty unawares without it. It happened on a basic roam a few months back, and we got sort of stomped because I wasn't paying attention to my -1s. Okay, any more questions on scouting? Azual, can you give the class an example of a good recon report, please?
Recon, this is Azual in X-7 on the JC gate. 6 neutrals in local. Vagabond on scan, nothing on grid.
Thank you, Azual. Find targets for me, please. That's a perfect recon report. Can you give an example of reporting a 20-man gang for me, Azual?
Break, Azual just got into X7 from JC. There's a 20-man battlecruiser gang here, on gate, bubble up. Mainly hurricanes, 2 logistics, getting safe.
Thank you. Yes, we use military reports. You might notice that Azual said recon for the first one there. We use the term recon as a comm signal to shut up. And it's not immediate, everyone shut up, drop whatever's in your hands, or the FC stop talking or anything, but it's recon, I have something important to tell you. And then after that he said break. And that means everyone shut up right now, because this is vital to the survival of the gang. Those two are very different. Recon or break. Break, he was saying that because our gang is about to land on the other side of that gate, so we need to get off. Right? Yep, okay. So what kind of ships do you use for scouting? People, what kind of ships do you assign for your scouts? Covops, yep. Fast ships, bombers, recons, exactly. The advantages of co-ops are that they are cloaky, they can move very unhindered, and they can also probe. recons can add a lot of stuff to the gang, like webs and points and long-range points and newts and everything. Yeah, interdiction nullified tech 3s, they are immune to almost everything. And recons can Sino, but we generally don't Sino that much. And bombers are of course nice. Fast ships, interceptors, dramiels, stuff like that, reasonably survivable. Yep, what Stalking Mantis said there. Finn?
Yeah, I was wondering, for your scouts, do you have like any requirements for fits and speed? Like if you're flying a scepter or skirmisher or something?
Well, we generally let people fly whatever they want, but if they die with a horrible fit, we'll troll them a bit and tell them to stop sucking. And we'll also, I'm very fond of flying a fleet interceptor with shield extender on it. I'll link my skirmishing fit. Let's see. That's Glepp's skirmish RS fit. And the rocket launcher fits defenders. Yes, that's right, defenders. Okay, I'm thinking we'll take a 5-minute bio break now. Does that sound okay to you guys? And then I'll explain the defenders when I get back.